Okay. Good morning, class.
Good morning, sir.
Good. I am doing well. I believe you are all doing well too.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't know if we have to wait for, your colleagues. We are still below 30 participants now. I don't know. Okay. So before we start, let me know if there are outstanding issues, questions, comments that I need to address before we start our meeting today. I tried posting some of the materials on the portal. I believe you have been able to access them. Um, do you have access to, the course materials?
Uh,
Yes. Can I hear from you? Or because
sir,
when I checked, some of you have not even visited the portal
sir,
for yes, sir.
so this is Emmanuel. I don't really know the time, but I checked yesterday and it was not there. So I even contacted Paul. I don't know whether it's from my LMS or it's you uploaded it later on. But I checked yesterday, there was nothing.
Okay, so
Hello,
you
sir.
can check again.
Oh, okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, madam.
Good morning. Please, I've checked. It's there.
Is there? Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I will recheck again.
Okay, all right. Okay, so last week we started the journey for the semester, and then we basically look at some of the things we did from last semester. So we started with business needs. We explained what business needs are, and then we also looked at business focus of contemporary organizations. And then the last part was on business case. So from last semester, we saw that organizations, regardless of the size or form of ownership, they all need certain requirement or input. So traditionally, once the organization identifies a need, it is seen as those administrative or clerical functions of procurement. So procurement was basically seen as just performing support or administrative role. But later we saw that the modern organizations don't see procurement as just administrative. In fact, the focus has changed from a mere administrative role to business focus. So that explains why we don't classify those organizational needs as just that. They are seen or regarded as what business needs. So once they are business needs, we don't just procure them. We only procure them when a real need has been identified. And that the acquisition of such needs will not only fulfill the operational mandate of procurement, but rather add some value to the overall objective of what the organization. So we look at, the the basic objective of procurement, which is primarily to fulfill the acquisition of right inputs for the organization. And then, as I mentioned, because the focus has changed, now we don't only procure, we are not just procuring. The moment you identify a need, you also need to come out with what? A business justification or a business case. So once there is no business case, it means that that acquisition should not be, done, because it is not going to add any meaningful benefit to the organization, but rather increase the cost aspect of the organization. So all procurement should establish a real business case. Okay. So once you receive the request, as a procurement person, it is incumbent on you to subject or interrogate that request. And the purpose for the interrogation is for you to establish the business case or the justification for that procurement activity. So at the end of the process, if no business justification is established, the procurement should not be undertaken. Okay, so I said that the proposed procurement should be examined and challenged to demonstrate how they contribute to the commercial and strategic objectives of the business or to the organization. Because traditionally, or when you talk about procurement practice, like we saw, anybody at all, whether you have the experience or not, we all participate or we all undertake some aspect of what? Procurement activities. But once we move to that organizational procurement, then it is a serious activity. And for that matter, only qualified people should be given the chance to execute that mandate. So if you're doing that, then your presence should be felt. You are not just any ordinary employee of the organization, because you have a special mandate. The mandate is that you need to minimize procurement costs. And every procurement that is being superintended by you should add value to the organization. Okay, so we don't just examine and challenge to demonstrate that. But again, the proposed procurement should be planned and managed in such a way as to maximize their contribution to the commercial and then strategic objectives of the business. Example, by achieving value for money, minimizing waste, among others. So basically, that is what we revisited last week. Today, we will look at, some of you did that last semester. So we look at procurement rules. For the purpose of those who didn't, study that, we'll look at the procurement methods and then also consider the influence or factors that influence the choice of a procurement method. So this is what we'll be doing for today. You look at procurement rules, look at procurement methods, and then factors that influence the choice of a procurement method. Are we on the same page?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So without wasting time, the question is, what are procurement rules? You know, and I'll start by saying that once you hear procurement, you should understand that the term is synonymous to rules, rules or guidelines governing how we procure goods, works, and services. Okay, so any well-established organization has rules or guidelines governing how the acquisition of goods, works, and services are done. Okay, so if you move to public sector procurement, there is an established law. Okay, so we used to have the Act 683, and the Act was amended in 2016. So now we have the amended Act, that is Act 914. Okay, so that is the law or the rules for procurement activities within the public space. In the same way, if you move to private organizations, now I'm talking about well-established ones, they have procurement guidelines. So the fact that probably you have qualification in procurement does not mean you can do anything you want. You need to understand how the guidelines are or the law defines what needs to be done and then what is not supposed to be done. So procurement entities per, if you, and I'll be using the Procurement Act a lot because that is well known. Because for private ones, we have different, guidelines for different organizations. But for the Procurement Act, it is the same for all public sector organizations. So I'll be using that a lot in this tutorials. So procurement entities, according to the rules, are to prepare procurement plans for each fiscal year. And as part of the rules, all procurement entities in public sector are supposed to come out with what we term as what? A procurement plan. Okay. So that is that. So you cannot ignore this rule. You cannot ignore it. You need to, once you work there as a procurement person, you need to adhere to this rule. And then P's are to aggregate requirement to achieve economies of scale where appropriate. So sometimes, entities are allowed to buy in bits. But when you intentionally, as a procurement officer, decided to break the bulk, it is against the rule. So we need to aggregate. Okay, so once we are planning, and then if you go to any organization, you will see a number of what? User departments. So for instance, there may be about 8 user departments or 7 user departments. So once you are planning procurement for, let's say, the ensuing year, you realize that maybe for HR department, there will be a proposed procurement need for, let's say, laptop, how many? And the report or the input you receive from that department, they will indicate probably 2. And then you see other departments also indicating laptop, laptop, laptop. So at the end of the plan, you realize that probably in the next year, based on your procurement plan, there will be a need to procure about 15 laptops. Okay, so once you have the aggregate, then you can say that, okay, let us go this way. Let us, because of, the 15 laptops, you can even, through negotiation, you can negotiate for better deals. So the aggregation is highly recommended because it helps entities to achieve what we call economies of scale. So that is why we need to, if it becomes necessary, we need to aggregate what requirement. And then tenders should satisfy all qualification requirements under the law or the act. So for any procurement activity, the tenders must satisfy all qualification requirements. So that's why I've been saying that, as a professional, if you know the law and you go against the law, then your next habitat will be in someone because of the rule or the law associated with what procurement processes and activities. Okay, so pre-qualification proceedings to identify qualified tenderers. These are all part of what? The rules. So sometimes it is necessary to pre-qualify certain suppliers or tenderers. Sometimes you need to open up. Sometimes you need to restrict the procurement process. And you only do that based on what has been captured in the law or in the rules. So there are situations where the entity may be allowed to open up the procurement process. And then sometimes the entity will have the room to restrict the procurement process. And all these conditions have been properly stated in the law. Again, the need for all communications between procurement entities and tenders to be in writing. It is also captured in the law. So all communication between the procurement entity or the buyer and then tenders must be in writing. Okay, and then good documentation because we are dealing with the law. So people might not be happy with the processes and as a result may decide to take you on. So once it happens, you can only defend yourself based on what? The relevant document or evidence that you have. So good record keeping of procurement proceedings is highly recommended. And then again, grounds for rejection of tenders should be specified in the tender document. So if you are going to reject tenders, the basis for the rejection must be stated in the tender document. And all tenderers are aware that their bids could be rejected based on A, B, and C. So you don't start the process and then you introduce certain rules. It is clearly stated in the tender document, and participants are aware about the rules. They know everything before they show interest in the process. And then acceptance of tender and entering into force of contract should be in line with the act, the law, or the guidelines in case, it's within the private sector. And then the last parts of the rules, procurement entities should publish notice of contract award promptly. So once the process is done, a successful tenderer is selected, and then the contract is signed. I mean, when the successful tenderer is selected, then we need to publish the notice of contract award promptly. And then the entities should reject all forms of inducement from service providers. All forms. Because such inducement can affect the outcome. So that is why you need to reject it. And that is why, as a procurement lecturer, I've been telling my students that you don't give me gifts. Whilst in school, maybe after 10 years of, of school, maybe when we meet, can sit down and talk. But whilst in school, you're not supposed to give me gifts because it can influence my sense of judgment. And that is not a good thing. So personally, I don't do that. And I think all my students are aware. The same applies to the practitioners. Okay. And then description of goods should be accurate and non-restrictive. We will come to that shortly. But I'm telling you that procurement and law, they move together. They move together. So you can't call yourself a procurement person without paying attention to the rules or guidelines establishing the entity. Language of tender documents and offers should be in English. Don't forget. So when you find yourself in Ghana, we have different languages. That is fine. You can speak your language to, participant. That is fine. But when it comes to the actual procurement engagement, the rule is very clear. The language must be what? English. It must be English and nothing more or nothing less. Okay, so now that we are done with the rules, we move straight to the procurement methods. So you can't get up and say that we are procuring A, B, and C without considering the rules. So the rules will tell you which of the method should be used under which condition. So you don't have that freedom to do whatever you want. You work with the law, you work with the rules, you work with the guidelines. So there are a number of procurement methods. And the following are some of the common ones. So we have a method like competitive tendering method. In other jurisdictions, they call it what? Open tendering. Open tendering. And then we have restricted tendering, and there are a number of them. So those methods are not open. More or less, they are closed. They come with some restrictions. And these methods include restricted tendering itself. We have two-stage tendering method. And there's one method we call single source procurement method. In fact, we use single source and sole source interchangeably, even in public procurement. But there's a clear distinction between the two. We have request for quotation, we have request for proposal, and then for request for proposal goes with consultancy services. Consultancy services. Okay. Now, to be able to select method A, B, or C is dependent on primarily what we term as what? Threshold. In other words, procurement method must be selected based on what? The threshold. That is the primary determinant of a procurement method. Ideally, all procurement methods must be selected based on the threshold. That is what it means. All procurement methods must be selected based on the threshold. So if you look at the Act, there's a section that contains the threshold. And then the threshold is reviewed periodically. Okay. However, sometimes certain circumstances will happen, and then it becomes difficult to achieve or procure or acquire the needed supplies or items. And as a result, the law or the rule allows for a method to be used without following the threshold condition. So there are certain conditions, and you go into those conditions. But first of all, let me ask, when we say threshold, how do you understand threshold? Okay, Mr. Danso. Your microphone, please. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Danso, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
No, I raised my hand earlier for you to explain to us what that threshold is.
Oh,
but I don't know whether it should be in terms of the money, the amount involved, that we have set the threshold that, well, when the amount for the contract or the procurement is about maybe between 1,000 to 1,500, we can take this one, and then we have to go competitive when the amount is beyond 1 million or something. That is what I have in mind, but I wanted a clarity on that. That's why I raised my hand.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will come to that, but I think some of your colleagues, have studied this. So, Mike, okay, Newton, go ahead. Newton.
So, sir, yes, threshold simply means that the minimum point at which everything stops. You shouldn't go beyond it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Emmanuel.
Yeah, so when we talk of threshold, in my view, we are talking about the point or the limit or level at which something changes or is to be done.
Okay. 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 So those who did, procurement principles last semester, can you help us? Threshold. I know some of you did principles with Dr. Chia. Is that the definition or explanation he gave? Okay, so let me show you a typical threshold. So I want to project that for you to, see the threshold. Your hand, is it the old one? Okay.
That is the old one.
Okay. Okay. So I want to show you a typical threshold. All right. So let me see. Um, okay. So I think I have it here. Okay. So like Mr. Danso was saying, and I think some of you were also very close to that. So when we talk about the threshold, it is basically it's this. I hope you can see the screen now. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So yeah.
Yes.
So once you have access to, the at 914, this is the new one. We have thresholds. So we have procurement method and then the contract value threshold. So look at number one, and then we are talking about, look at the number one, the first method. We have international competitive tendering method. And then we have categories. We have goods, we have works, and then we have technical services. For consultancy services, we don't have threshold. So we have threshold for goods, works, and services. And this is, common in public procurement. So for goods procurement, once the procurement value is above 10 million Ghana cedis, once the procurement value is above 10 million Ghana cedis, then look at the art. The art is saying that you need to use what? International competitive tendering method. So the threshold, everything has been captured here. Once the value, and specifically goods procurement, once the value of procurement is 10 million cedis and above maybe 10 million in one city, it means it is above 10 million. So we need to use what we call international competitive tendering method. For works procurement, works, construction, if the value is above 50 million Ghana cedis, the law is saying that we need to use what? International competitive tendering method. And then we have technical services. And then we can go to the other methods. We have the national competitive tendering method. You've been doing procurement for 2 years now, and some of you are already into practice. Let me ask, how will you arrive at the procurement value? How will you know that the value of procurement is 10 million, is 5 million, or is 2 million? And for that matter, I need to use method A, method B, method C. So when you talk about threshold, this is the threshold. But I am asking another question. How will you arrive at the value of procurement? And I want somebody to respond to this question. Now we know that if the value is this, we use this particular method. But the question is, how will you, the entity, arrive at a particular value and say that because the value is 1 million, 2 million, and according to the threshold, one that is this, we are using this. But how would the entity arrive at a particular figure? Okay, Dede.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Please, this is Bismarck.
Hey, Bismarck, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you're able to arrive at the threshold when you calculate the total cost of ownership.
Hey, Bismarck, are you sure? Okay, so let's hold on and see. Mr. Danso, help us.
Yes, sir. So I think you first have to assess the works that have to be done, or if it goes that you have to acquire. So basically, you can start with RFQs to have quotation ranges and basis that you know whether you have to go for local, national, or international tendering.
Okay, you have tried maybe 4 out of 5. Okay, Michael. Michael,
Right.
again.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so to add up to what Mr. Danso said, you may want to conduct a market survey or a research to be abreast with what the market is like at any given point in time, because that will inform you as to how much this cost. When you do a survey, you are able to have a fair idea, the range within which it costs, and then you are able to come up with an estimate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe 4 over 10. Yes. Yes. Let me see. I want to, the ladies, where are they? Okay, Michael Darko. Mr. Michael Darko, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I think that you can identify the threshold when after the department that needs the item or that needs the goods or services to be given, when they present their purchase requisition or requisition request, it comes with some details detailing what they need, and then sometimes comes with the budget concerning what exactly they need for their department. So I think with that, you know the amount involved, and that can largely inform your decision on the threshold and then the process that you use in
Okay.
procuring that item for the department.
Wonderful. So maybe 7 or 8 over 10. Okay, so Mr. Ade, let's get 10 over 10.
All right, so what I think about this is to first determine the procurement value. And in doing so, you estimate the total cost of what you are
No.
buying.
So hold on. How do you determine the procurement value? That is the question. How do you determine the procurement value?
So I say market research, and also you scope it in the sense that what exactly are you buying? The quantity, the spec, the service, or the levels. So you factor all these things to be able to identify the value of the procurement.
Okay. Okay, good attempt. Okay. I think more hands. Mr. Ochre. Wisdom Ochre.
So by factoring all this, you need to factor the taxes and the taxes also, so that you can calculate the tax per each estimate, so that you add it to verify whether it amount to that 10,000, 10 million, or is over.
Okay. I'm not Not convinced. Okay, so maybe need the final one, need time.
Yes, sir. So, sir, with this one, first of all, at the planning stage of procurement, whatever is going to be procured is determined.
Wonderful.
And then the value is also established.
Wonderful.
Then now, the entity must look at whether we can do it locally or internationally. Then now, the type of procurement and then the threshold will either give them an information that whether we should go international or locally.
Wonderful. So, you see, Neil, you said it all. You see, when we were talking about the procurement cycle, we said that the planning could sometimes be referred to as what? Budgeting or funding. You get it? So once you identify the need, once you decide to procure, you don't just say that we are going to procure. You need to budget. So that is where all the market research will come in. So at the planning stage, you budget for the procurement. So if you are going to procure, let's say, a vehicle, you don't get up and say we are going to procure. You need to, first of all, know how much it will cost the organization to procure that vehicle. And then establish the fact that you have the source of funds to procure that, vehicle. So at the budgeting stage or at the planning stage, you will determine, you will know the cost of what? Procurement. And that will tell you that, okay, so the procurement will cost us this amount. Okay, so if it will cost us this amount, then we go back to the threshold session and then look for what? The corresponding what? Procurement method. Simple as that. Simple as that. So at the budgeting stage, you know how much it will cost you. So that's why we call it budget. It can go up or it can, decrease. But at least you have a fair idea how much that item, that procurement is going to cost the organization. So at the budgeting stage or the planning stage, do you get that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the reason why we need to budget. That is the reason why we need to plan. Okay, we need to budget, we need to plan our procurement. So from the planning, you say that we don't have cash, you don't have money, but the item is critical. So what do we do? So you could use or explore other strategic, ways. Apart from you not having the money, there could be other arrangements because we are talking about procurement here. So if the entity does not have the resources, what other method can the organization use to acquire that critical need or item? So you may explore the market and use those methods in order to get that critical need for the organization. So procurement is not just about direct purchasing or buying. We said it, level 100, that we can use other arrangement. So based on the budget, you say that we don't have this money. So what do? We still need the item. The business case has been established. The item is needed. It is going to add something positive to the organization, but there's no money in our coffers. So what do? We use other legitimate means or strategic means to get the item delivered or procured for the user. So that is that. So the threshold is the fair determinant. In fact, it is the major determinant of a procurement method. But as I mentioned, sometimes there could be some circumstances, and then the law allows the entity to use any of the method. Because if you want to satisfy a need, it means that it is urgent, critical. So going by the threshold may delay the procurement process. And as you maybe, and for those of you who didn't know, the default procurement method is competitive tendering. The default method is competitive tendering. And we will come to competitive tendering shortly. The default method is competitive tendering. So ideally, all procurement methods must be subjected to what? Competitive tendering method. And as we know, due to certain circumstances, subjecting our procurement through competitive tendering method may be ideal, but will not be suitable for the entity for situations like what you see on the screen. When there's what? Emergency requirement, or the need is urgent. When you need something within days, next 2-3 days, or 1 week, you can't use competitive tendering method. And for some competitive tendering method, the process can last more than 6 months or 8 months. So if you need something within a week, using competitive tendering method, even though it is the default method, will not be suitable. Will not be suitable. Okay. So these are the circumstances that can, call for the use of any of the less competitive method apart from, the competitive method. Okay. So ideally, all procurement must be subjected to what? Competitive tendering method. And I'm saying that certain circumstances, like one, when the need is urgent, or there's what? Emergency requirement. Two, when there's what? Limited number of suppliers. So it means that even if you use competitive tendering method, you will eventually come to the same number of suppliers. We have just 3 suppliers supplying maybe a product. Because you've been doing market research. So once we talk about this type of product, we can only get it from 2 major suppliers in Ghana. So if you still go ahead and use competitive tendering method, you still come back to the same supplier. So there's no need using competitive tendering method. And then the third circumstance will be what? A contract extension. You have already contracted a contractor. Project is ongoing perfectly. You are okay with the job done by the contractor. Initially, you wanted to construct, let's say, a 2-story. Work is progressing very well. And then along the line, you realize that no, you can go 1 extra floor or maybe 2 more floors. Since you're okay with the contractor on site, you can get the necessary approval to use, the same contractor for the extension or the modification or the variation. The law allows that to happen. And then 2, the fourth one, when it has to do with research, experiment, study or development purposes. Because these activities take time. Okay, so if you are doing research, experiment, you can't be, moving from one, maybe consultant or researcher to the other, because the consultant will need time to maybe arrive at what? The conclusion. So you need to allow maybe one particular researcher to continue with the work. Some people are still working on certain projects for almost 10 years now. They are still working. Answers have not been found, but they are still working. They want to find answers to certain questions. So anything that has to do with research or experiment, you don't just allow a lot of people to come in. Okay, so you need to allow them to continue with their work until answers are found. And then anything that has to do with national security, you can't just open up. You can't just open up because we are talking about national security. So once a lot of people are aware of what happened, what goes on within your national security jurisdiction, then your country is in danger. So that is why, we don't see the military advertising for ammunition of suppliers. You don't see them, or even their uniforms. You don't see them advertising because it has to do with national security. You can't just open up like that. Or public health or public safety, things like that. You don't want to allow people to know everything about your national security. Compatibility or standardization purposes. Okay, so maybe in your organization you use a particular product. It is a known fact. It is a known and established fact. Okay, so once it is a known fact that we can only deal with this because that's what we do in our organization. If you allow other suppliers to come in, it means that they are coming to destroy the standard we have established for maybe 100 years, 50 years. So for that matter, we want to be dealing with maybe just this supplier, just that contractor, because of what we have been able to create for ourselves. Because the moment you mention that, people know us for this. Once you allow other people to come in, it means they are coming to maybe contaminate what we are known for. So we don't want others to come in. And then availability of goods. Is the goods readily available or they are scarcely available? And that will also affect the, what do you call it, the choice of a procurement method. However, if you are not using competitive tendering, but selecting a method based on these circumstances, the law requires that you write to the Public Procurement Authority, the regulator, for approval before any of these methods could be used. That notwithstanding, and like we have it here, sometimes due to the urgency of the requirement, we cannot wait for the regulator's approval. So procurement will commence whilst we wait for the approval. And the approval is not automatic. It doesn't mean that the moment you write to the regulator, they will 100% approve your request. No, that is not the case. It means the regulator can either approve or disapprove. So whatever you are sending to the regulator must be solid. Okay, must be solid. Because imagine you have already started the process 2 weeks or a month later, then the regulator responds to your letter by saying that your request has been disapproved. What are you going to do? You have already incurred losses or what people will say, financial loss to the state. And like you saw from the principles of procurement, can you mention some of the principles you learned? Principles of what? Accountability. Principles of what? Professionalism, among others. So if you call yourself a professional, you need to make an informed decision. So what informed your decision to use a method, knowing definitely that it does not or it didn't qualify for that recognition? but you went ahead to use a method. And you knew that to be able to be given the approval, you need to meet certain conditions. And you knew that there's no way your request will receive the needed approval because it does not contain those conditions. So when it happens like that, then you'll be heading straight to where? In somewhere. Especially if you find yourself in public sector procurement. So there are two.
Please, I have a question.
Okay, hold on. There are two determinants. To select a method, there are two determinants. But one is the primary determinant, and that is the threshold. And I'm saying that you must only select a method based on the threshold. But there's a caveat here. But sometimes there are certain things that happen, and there's little we can do about it. And because we want to satisfy a need, critical need, going competitively will not be suitable. So that is why the law allows the entity to use any of the less competitive methods. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah. So please, as regards the previous slide regarding the limited number of suppliers, I wanted to find out, is there a specific number determined by law as to the number of suppliers available for a specific goods, services, or works, which determines the situation of a limited number of suppliers that will make you use certain procurement methods?
Okay, so we will go into the methods briefly. I mean, we will go into the methods. So you know, I mean, the number of suppliers or tenders needed for some of the, methods. But you see, if you know definitely that for a particular product, there's only one major supplier in Ghana, why do you want to use competitive tendering method? Let me ask. You know that, oh, when we are talking about this type of, can you give an example of a product or service that can be supplied or provided by just one company in Ghana? Can you think of any? Just look around. Give me one. Ghana. We are limiting ourselves to Ghana. Just look at Ghana. A product or service that can be offered or provided by just one company. Or maybe just two companies or suppliers. Do we have examples of? Okay, Michael, AJ.
Sorry, my hand is up for a question, please.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's deal with this first, then we come back.
Hold on. Yes. So can somebody answer my question?
Yes, sir. Electricity.
Electricity. Okay, Mr. Danso. To some extent. So who are the suppliers or providers of electricity in Ghana? Can you tell us, Mr. Danso?
Yeah, so as we know the setup, either we are getting it from ECG, and ECG also have two suppliers that they deal with. When you go to the north, you give you a different name. When you come south, they give you a different name. But they also get their source from Gridco.
Okay.
Gridco and the other third-party providers.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't know. So before we go to Michael, I want to still stick to my question. Mr. Adako, do you want to respond to my question or?
Yes, sir. I think
Okay.
the biometric identification cards, the
Biometric
production of biometric, yes, like
Ghana card. You mean Ghana
Health,
card?
yes, the Ghana card, and then the Ghana Health Insurance cards, like those type of chip embedded cards.
Okay, so let's move away from public goods to real economic goods. I mean, when you go to the market, if you want to procure things you can find on the market. I want to give you a typical example that this product said, maybe just this company or just these two companies supply them. Do we have examples of such items? Maybe. Okay. I heard a female voice. Oh God, thank you. Yes.
Say Idelmark from Nestle.
Idelmark. So are you saying that, are you talking about milk or just the Idelmark?
No, say I'm talking about milk.
So, okay. So apart from Idelmark, don't we have any other milk in Ghana?
So we have, but when you say Idelmark, it's probably from Nestle company.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyways,
Hello,
okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Can we talk about the telecos? Because currently I think we have only 3.
3, okay. Okay.
So you cannot go beyond those 3 if you want to. You want those services because you have MTN, the Vodafone, and then the other one. So basically, these are the only people that.
Say is talking about products on the market.
Product or service, not just product. Product or service.
Okay. Product or service.
Yeah.
Oh, then so we can also say flour. Flour. Yes, because flour, I know Takrali flour mills. And then there's one, there are only 2 in Ghana.
Yeah. So that is a typical example. That is a typical example. So if you want to buy flour in commercial quantities, okay, knowing definitely that in Ghana you can get it from only 2 sources. What will inform you to use competitive tendering method? Because if you use it, you will still go back to the same suppliers. The same suppliers will show up. Okay, so and then what about let's say air transport in Ghana?
Our impatient.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe you can hold on. Michael, go ahead with your question, please.
So I wanted to ask that, I mean, last semester we did law of agency.
Okay.
We understood that one of the ways agency could be established is by ratification. I want to ask, doesn't it apply ratification?
Okay.
I'm asking this, I mean, because of where you ended, that suppose there is an agency for us to procure an item, a good or service. And then because of the time, I mean, constraints, we need to proceed first. And then we may proceed and then later seek approval. Maybe we have sought it, but we are waiting for approval or otherwise.
Yeah.
And it comes out that it was turned down. Can't they ratify it? Can't it be ratified?
No, you see, I find it difficult when people struggle to, perform procurement activities. I find it difficult to get it because it is straightforward though. Especially those in public sector, it is straightforward. This thing is there. The law does not say that you cannot use less competitive method. That is not what the law says. The law says that there are windows for using those less competitive method. So you must meet those conditions for using them. So that is why, because the item is urgent, you start the process. You start the process. And who is pushing for the process to start? It is you, the procurement officer. And it is believed that you are what? A professional. And you know what is in the law. You know what the guideline says. So before we use this method, the guideline says that we must meet condition A, B, C. Any of them qualifies us for using it. Okay, so if you do not meet those conditions, and then you went ahead to use it, and then eventually the regulator says you did the wrong thing, it will be on you, because you know it as a professional. There are principle of professionality. You didn't go by it. And there's another principle known as what? Accountability. So you account for your actions and your inactions. So here, the law of agency will not come here. Nothing will come and help you because you didn't do the right thing. But when you use the right, maybe you follow the right condition, and then somebody there at the top failed to recognize the work you did, and then disapprove, you can challenge that, at the court of what? Competent jurisdiction, because you did the right thing as a professional. On that basis, you could be saved. But if you didn't do the right thing, nobody can save you, unless probably you have political link somewhere. Mr. Danso.
Yeah, so I just want to give an example. For instance, there was this emergency issue at VRA where they have to transport one of their transformers for servicing. Now they send an RFQ to about 6 organizations that we met there. Everything was documented, went for inspection, and they are supposed to bring their quotes.
Yeah.
Then at the time of presenting the quotation, we are the only people who showed up because of the complexity of the project.
Okay.
Now they went ahead to give us the project, but then they also working aside on the sole sourcing, because now you look at it with the sole sourcing because they have only one value. Because so we went ahead to start the process while they were also focusing on getting the approval. So basically, it's about how you put the things. If it's urgent, you should have all document that you didn't call for one person, or you put everything what it entails, the nature of the project or the nature of the item, its urgency, and how you went about it, all documented and then sent to them. And I think that if you should follow up their procedure, it will be eventually approved. But there are timing. That's the only challenge we have, because it's going to take a longer time. It took them more than 3 months for the approval.
You see. So even under the situation, they could have just come to you. Just a sole source arrangement would receive the necessary approval, because at the time, almost everybody was complaining that Doomsaw has, arrived again. People were complaining, and then the president didn't want that to happen. So if what's the Gridco had used sole source for that procurement activity, they will still have received the necessary approval, because it was urgent. It was urgent, and all of us saw it. All of us witnessed it. Because where I stay, hardly will my place, experience blackouts, but we're experiencing it. So Michael, that is the situation. Please, I am telling you, you know the right things. You know it. You know it. So once it is outside, be careful. Once it is outside, be careful, because you may account for your actions. You may account for your actions, and the outcome may not be favorable to you. So you need to be very careful with what you do. So that's why I said procurement is very close to. It moves with law or rules. The rest of the class, are you following? Because we are building something.
Yes, sir.
You are very quiet.
Yeah.
Especially Mrs. Abigail Aqua. She's very quiet for some time now.
Sir, we are here. We are listening.
No, I'm saying you are very quiet. You have been quiet. Yeah. Okay, so I think we need to move straight to talk about the methods. So like I mentioned, we have what we call competitive tendering. And I said it's the default method. In some books, you will not see competitive, you see open tendering. And we say that this is standard high value tendering methodology. High value tendering methodology. So it is a method with a maximum competition. And that explains why competitive method is the default method. I didn't teach you principles, but I know the principles. One of the principles is what? Competitiveness, competition. So we want to have competition in the procurement process. Why? Because there are a lot of benefits or advantages linked to competition in terms of price, in terms of quality, among others. So if we plan a procurement and then it qualifies for or it meets the competitive threshold, then we need to subject that to competitive tendering method because of the numerous benefits of what? Competitive tendering. So once we are using competitive method, there are two forms. In public procurement, there's one we call international competitive tendering method. And then we have the national competitive tendering method. These are the two forms under what we call competitive tendering method. They are all competitive tendering method, but one is known as what? International. International competitive tendering method. So this is high value or complex procurement methodology. And it is normally used when you realize that the nature of procurement is unlikely to attract enough competition locally. Okay, so once you realize that you are not likely to get enough competition, but don't forget, the procurement is high value, meaning the value for that procurement is high value. It is huge and at the same time complex. So if you are not going to get that competition from the domestic market, then you need to go outside. You need to open the doors for international companies to participate in that procurement process. Okay, so the first determinant for using this is that you need to meet that minimum threshold. And I showed you the threshold for goods, for works, and for technical services. Okay, so that is that. That is that for international competitive tendering method. And then we have national competitive tendering method. It is a competitive tendering method anyways, but relatively low value compared to the international one. So it means that the threshold is not as high compared to the international competitive tendering threshold. And then once the value is small, it will be unlikely to attract foreign competition. Because you know these foreign companies, they're only interested in high value contracts. So less than 10 million, they will not even come. You get it? So looking at the two forms under competitive tender method, which one of them, which of the two will be the most ideal method and why from this explanation I've given between the international competitive tender method and then the national competitive tender method, which of them, assuming all, criteria have been met, which of the two supposed to be used and why? Can you tell us why, which of them is the ideal method between the international and then the national competitive tender method? Don't forget, the two are part of the competitive tender method. Yes. Okay. King Joseph Nitan.
Yes, sir. Sir, so with the international competitive tendering and then the national competitive tendering, from all that you've taught, I will go for the national competitive tendering because if you look at our procurement system, most of the time the national competitive tendering goes because we have a lot of things that entities need are more local. Hardly before you get international competitive tendering because of the nature of it. If the thing is a capital procurement, whereby you may not get it internally, then you have to go out. But if you check records, you realize that most tenderings that are issued are all national, which means that we want the local people to partake in it. So I think that the national competitive tendering is the most appropriate, unless it is a capital procurement, then we may look at international. Because I have an example. For instance, if you look at a company like TLOC, Tamalu Oil, the steel that they use to do the drums that they put the oil in, we don't have it here. So with them, they will go outside, which is very capital because they have to go outside and then the value so that they will get other companies outside Ghana to come in and do national competitive tendering. And with that, I'm sure the locals also look for principals outside like that to come and bid. But those ones are annual basis things. But within the year, most of the time, national competitive tendering goes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. But you see, I think everything you said, I was cool with that, with the exception of one. So what if the product in question is readily available on the domestic market? It could be a capital product, but could be provided or supplied from the domestic market. In this case, which of the method will you recommend and why? The product in question is a capital intensive or capital procurement. Local suppliers have the capacity to supply. The same applies to international suppliers. So you can use national, you can use international. So looking at the two, which one will you recommend and why, Michael?
In the circumstance or the prevailing circumstance you just said, I'll go for the national competitive tendering. Reason being that, they have the capacity to do that. Quality and everything is, if it's the same, then I'll go with that. The reason being that it also affords our own people to develop. I think in level 100, you spoke about local content. You gave it a name,
Yeah.
I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it forces our people to, level up in that regard,
Okay.
aside everything.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Mr. Danso, wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Mike.
So,
Mm-hmm.
just as you said, yes, we have the local capacity here.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of the amount involved, we float it. But we should also be mindful that when we say international competitive, doesn't mean that local doesn't participate.
Yeah.
It's both local and international. So if you have the capacity, you can participate. And the truth is that you float it as such, you are going to have competitive, more competitive pricing, because the local, knowing that somebody from outside is involved, will also try to reduce its profit margins. Ghanaians sometimes want to buy something 50 and sell it at 100.
Yeah.
We've gone for competitive. We've sent tenders that people didn't show up. We said, oh, if you have not, they won't come. Would have doubled the amount, because you know that when you double it, you still get it. So I'll prefer that we float it, get what others people are giving. We can still give it to a local person, but then they will have to go and do a homework, reduce the amount, and bring it back. If we still want the locals to do it, because it's done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we've had enough. The contribution so far, very good. So Nee and Mikey, you're on the same stage. But I think when I was speaking, maybe you didn't listen to me well. I said the default method is competitive tendering method. Do you know why I mentioned the level of competition? Because we are in competition, allows or pushes for what? Procurement pushes for what? Competition. That is why competition is a key principle. So if the time is right, all our procurement processes must go through competition because of the advantages associated with what? Competition. So the fact that local companies have the capacity does not mean that we must limit all procurement to the domestic market. We are talking about what? Competition. If you still want to favor them, there's something you can introduce. I think I mentioned it here. There's something you call margin of preference. Okay. But we are not forgetting about what? The benefit of competition in the procurement process. The quality that can be achieved. If we allow international companies to participate in the procurement process, it is good we allow local content, but we are talking about value for money. Okay, value for money. So we need to, and it's a key principle. So we need to allow for competition, and competition can only, value for money can only achieve through competition. So if you limit, that is why procurement law or processes frown on what? Restricted tendering processes, because it makes procurement cost high. Methods like single source or sole source procurement method, it is high because if I know I'm the only one, and you know what happens, basic economics, I'm the only supplier, I will have a stronger negotiation, position. I'll be making prices for the buyer, and that is not good for the procurement entity. That is not good for the procurement entity. We need to look for ways that will bring or minimize the cost of procurement. So if you have, that's why I said, if you have that chance, if everything calls for competition, okay, you have a qualified, the threshold is okay, everything is okay. Now it is just you, the entity, to decide whether you use international competitive tendering method or national competitive tendering method. Which one will you use? You are thinking about your organization first. You want to achieve value for money. So you need to open up so that you have a lot of competitors. So once they are a lot of suppliers are competing, you see the prices they will give you. Because I know that if I overprice, I'll be disqualified. So I will give what we call competitive prices. And that will help the buyer eventually. I hope that is fine. So we move to the other methods. If there are no questions, we move to the other methods. We have what we call restricted tendering method. It's another method. And this is also a form of what? Less competitive method. So most of the things are very similar to, the competitive tendering method. So there's a formal procedure with detailed invitation to tender document. Tender documents available to shortlisted suppliers, shortlisted. And then I think somebody asked a question, a minimum of what? 3, a maximum of what? 6 tenders. So if you are using a restricted tendering method, this is the condition. So you can't tell me that you only have just 1 or 2 tenders and you are calling the method restricted tendering, because the law is very clear. You need a minimum of what? 3, maximum 6. 6. And then there must be, you must meet one of the conditions I stated. If you want to use restricted tendering method, you must at least, because it is a less competitive method, you need approval from the regulator. So you need to look at it carefully. Question? Because we are moving to the next one. Then we have what we call, so here, like I mentioned, notice of restricted tendering award to be submitted to PPA within 4 weeks. And as I mentioned, it requires specific approval from the Public Procurement Authority because it is a less competitive method. It is one of those less competitive methods. And for all those less competitive methods, before you can use, especially within public sector procurement, you need approval from the Public Procurement Authority. So applicable where requirement is of specialized nature, has requirement of public safety, number of potential suppliers is what? Limited. And then finally, when open competitive tendering has failed. So any of these conditions, if it is the basis for the application or the use of a restricted tendering method, you will receive a favorable response from the regulator. But aside this, then I cannot defend you. You need to face the law yourself. So once you are prepared, once you are going to use a restricted tendering method, then you need to have any of these to support your claim. There's another method known as what? Two-stage tendering method, 2-stage. So here, tenderers are invited at the initial stage to contribute to detailed specification. So if you want to use the 2-stage tendering method, you don't just decide. There's a way, and you need to meet it before you can use it. Okay? So appropriate where detailed specification is difficult to prepare. And because it is another form of less competitive method, you will need approval. So your approval letter, your request letter must capture this condition. Because the condition is clearly stated in the law that if you want to use it, then you must meet those conditions. And one of the conditions is that, one, when it is difficult as a purchaser to come out with what? A detailed specification. So once you are finding it difficult to come out with a detailed specification, the law allows the use of what? A 2-stage tendering method. And then 2, character of the goods is subject to rapid technological advances. It is changing rapidly. So you may think that, oh, we are procuring the most current or innovative product on the market. Before you realize, you are dealing with 10-year-old item, because the item, especially the IT or technological advances. They keep changing. So before you realize, before now, people are buying iPhone, is it 18? You are thinking about 12. Others are buying 18, 9. You see, that's what people are thinking because this type of items are changing. Okay. So in order not to be behind, you want to have the supplies to help you draft a detailed specification. So when these suppliers come, they will tell you that if you're looking for the current version of this product, then we need to have this feature, we need to have this in your specification, we need to have this in your specification. Okay. So in the second stage, you only deal with suppliers or tenderers who participated in the first stage. That is how we use the two-stage tendering method. So if you advertise that probably you want to procure this or you want to build, for instance, a smart lecture block, 6 floors, the floor doesn't, or the university doesn't want to use national grid, or maybe this, once you enter the lecture room, automatically all the lights turn on, the AC, everything turns on. Once the last person leaves, everything turns off. And this is what we are talking about. So we want contractors who can help us come out with a detailed specification or drawings. So this is the advert. And then you see people coming to help. So you give a date. So they will come and help you design the specification. I mean, have a more detailed specification. So once that is done, then you give what was designed to those who participated in the first stage for them to come out with their proposal. And then the proposal will be evaluated, and then a successful tenderer is what selected, or contractor is selected to execute the work. So that is how the two-stage tendering method is also used. Then we have what we call single source. Single source. And like I mentioned, single source is what they normally do in public sector procurement, but they use the term sole source. And that is, it doesn't really add up, because sole source is used when there's a known, just a known or a sole supplier of a product or service, or a provider of a service. There's just a sole, one supplier. Okay, but when there are potential suppliers, but we pick one, just one, to do business with us, that is not sole source. It is single source. Single source procurement. So procurement method for sole source or single source requirement. And then we can use it for goods, wares, and services. So here you need simple procurement document, or standard tender document can be used to draft the invitation. And here there's no public tender opening. There's no public tender opening. Okay, and appropriate, look at the conditions that may call for the use or application of a single or sole source procurement method. 1, when procurement is for urgent items. Urgent items. Urgent. Like it happened at Akosombo. We were told, and now Mr. Danso has confirmed that indeed there were issues there. So we heard that some transformers were having issues. And as a result, power was a challenge for the whole country. So this was an urgent item, urgent procurement. So under the circumstances, that's why I said that the company could have used direct sole source or single source, and nobody could have challenged them because it qualified under the circumstances. It qualified for a single source procurement. Again, requirement can only be supplied by one source, just one source. And then the third condition is that additional requirement for standardization or compatibility, like I mentioned. Okay, so if it has to do with standardization or compatibility, maybe we only have Toyota cars in our company. For no fault of anyone, it has become an established fact. And you don't want to. And because we have only Toyota vehicles, we are dealing with maybe this particular supplier. So we can't just deal with any other supplier unless Toyota. Okay, because of compatibility. So even if the other Honda spare parts are cheaper on the market than any other spare parts, we can't use it because of, the cars we use in our organization. And then purposes of research, experiment, or when it has to do with national security or public safety. All these conditions qualify for the application of a single source procurement, sole source procurement method. And because it is a less competitive, and this one, there's no competition. So you need approval from the regulator if you're doing this within public sector. But you don't have to wait for the approval before you start. So once you think that the ground is okay, fertile for, cultivation, you can go ahead and use it. But some people, they know that, for their interest, they just want to start the process quickly, knowing definitely that the situation doesn't qualify for the application of a single source or sole source procurement. So if you do that, eventually you, the one pushing for it, will suffer for, doing the wrong thing, because you are a qualified person, you're supposed to do what is right. Okay, so that is that with, single source or sole source. Any question on the methods we have treated so far?
Hello, Doc. My hand is up, please.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
I want to find out if I'm right to say that single source is also a form of restricted tendering.
Yes, I even said it at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So I said that, yes, we have competitive method, and then we have the restricted methods. And then restricted method itself is part of those restricted tendering method.
Oh, okay. All right. And then secondly, when we're looking at the restricted tendering, you gave the conditions that it must meet in order for it to succeed.
Yeah.
The last point there says that you go for it if the competitive tendering method has failed. I want to find out exactly what you mean when you say that.
Okay. So maybe you look at the threshold initially. The threshold qualify for a competitive tender. It could be a national competitive tendering method. It could be international competitive tendering method. You use the process, but the process was not successful. Okay, so instead of getting a good contractor or supplier to perform the work, the process didn't see the light of day. Okay, so it failed. The process failed, and I don't know. if I would treat this, they are, sometimes the reason why sometimes the entity demands for certain things like securities, people will just show interest in the process. In the course of the process, they will say that we are no more interested. They will just pull from the race. You get it? So instead of selecting, then you will be compelled to maybe use other methods. So when the competitive tendering method has failed, maybe you started, it didn't end. So instead of selecting a particular supplier, you didn't get to that stage. Okay, so once the process failed, you have everywhere, that entity has every right to use a less competitive method because a competitive tendering method failed. So there's no point going by a competitive tendering method again. You get it? So
well understood, Doc.
Yeah, the president wants to, transform Terminal 2 to, modern terminal. So yeah, they are using, I don't know, they are using competitive tendering method. It is going through the process. When you ask, it is in the process. That's what they will tell you. So once they realize that, we wanted to complete this process within 3 months or 4 months. So at the end of the 4th month, nothing happens. The process was not successful. The owner can go back and say that once the competitive tendering method failed, I want to use this method. There's this contractor, maybe I met, or this company or this country has worked with. The contractor did so well, so we want to use that contractor to do the work for us. And you will get the approval from Public Procurement Authority because it qualifies under the restricted tender method. Okay, it qualifies under that condition. I want more questions from here, more questions, because I am more particular about the conditions, not just the methods, the conditions for using those methods. The conditions. Do we have, okay. Hey, Ernest, you are finally here. You are welcome. Go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, sir, I want to say, like, for instance, with a single source, I would like to use the MS as an example. For instance, maybe like a hospital. A hospital is demanding for a specific type of drugs, and that drugs can only be requested for, like you can only get it from NS chemist. So meaning it's only the what's the name? You can only NS chemist is the only one who can distribute it to the buyer.
Okay.
But maybe cannot buy it from any pharmacy or supplier.
Any other pharmacy. Okay.
Yeah, so it's only NS chemist.
Okay.
So therefore it's restricted, right?
Okay,
so it's restricted to the supplier.
So in your definition, this is more or less a sole source. It is a sole source. It is still a restricted tendering, but specifically it is a sole source because from the definition, once you can get a product or service from one source, only one source, then the name is what? Sole source. Sometimes people say single source, but it is a sole source procurement. But like we were saying, you need to have that authority to say that this product can only be supplied by NS chemists. You see, sometimes when students are defending their projects, they will give you a problem. They will tell you that, after doing this, the work has limited, distant interest, or little has been done on the topic. I say, hey, really? Where did you get that information from? So you need to have that authority. Who is saying that? Where is it coming from? Okay, maybe from the Pharmaceutical Council of Ghana. Okay, so once it is an established fact that this drug can only be supplied by, NS chemists, then you are good to go. Because in public space, things are not that straightforward. So you need to be very careful. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes,
Hello,
sir.
sir. Good
Sir,
morning,
please,
sir.
thank you very much for.
Yes, raise your. If you want to talk, please raise your hand. Me. Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. Okay. Sir, please, thank you for defining the bringing the point that single source and sole source are the same. But sir, I want to find out, in an emergency situation, single source and restricted tendering, which of them as a procurement manager should I go for?
Okay, so first of all, I didn't say that single source and sole source are the same. They are not the same, but we use the two interchangeably. But you as procurement student, you need to know the difference. Okay. So there's a distinction between the two. There's a distinction, but because I don't know if it's intentional or something. The application of the method, sometimes they will make it look as if the two are the same, but they are not the same. They are not the same. From World Bank, almost everything from our laws are coming from the World Bank. Okay,
yes,
so if you check the World Bank procurement guidelines, the two are not the same. All right, so if they are doing it, fine, you can go ahead and do it, but at least you need to know that the two are not the same. Back to the question you asked.
Yes.
You are talking about emergency. You are talking about emergency, especially something that has to do with public safety. When we're experiencing COVID, we wanted vaccines. So under the circumstance, going restricted tendering will not be the best because we want to save life. And I really love what the president said. We can bring back the economy, but to bring back life, it is something president can't do. So anything that has to do with health or life, we need to be very careful with it. Okay, so if people, maybe it's as a result of a heartbreak and you want to save life, just go straight. If you know the suppliers, go straight to them, get the needed drugs, and then save life. But if you have the chance, if it is not about life and death, it's about something else. If you can actually wait, if you can actually do more evaluation, then I would advise that to be able to get better value, then even though it is an emergency, but I would advise that you use restricted because that will give you a better advantage because there's some level of competition with, even though it is restricted, but there's some level of competition with restricted tendering than single source or sole source. But if it is about life and death, then I would advise that you use single, or sole source.
But sir, that brings me to the second. The second question is, these things at this point between the lines at this stage, that is where you really see if this person is a professional and he will not succumb to his negative side. Because at this stage, it's just flowing. And as quickly funds can be released. So how do you, that stage, how, as a procurement manager, how do you ensure that nobody will come in with the idea of collusion? Because you are a professional, but to abstain yourself between these lines is very critical. What do you do when now the pressure starts coming? Do you, just as you said, do you put it on the record that this person, because during some of our lectures, you made us understand that as for once the process has come in, you put the records down that this is the thing. You did A, B, C, D. At that point, is it a justifiable thing to do so that you will not end up in someone.
Yeah. Okay, so that is why I quickly moved to this side, the rules. So here, good documentation, good record keeping. So as a professional, you need to provide, you need to give advice. So if users are saying that, oh, this thing is critical, we need to use this method, you are there to streamline the procurement process. So you give advice, you report. So if they are still insisting that they do something else, you keep that records so that in case something happens in the future, you can survive by presenting your reports that this is the advice you give, but your superior rejected it. Okay, and since you are not the spending officer, there was nothing you could do, so you just allow them to use it, and this is your evidence. So you need to be very careful, unless probably you are also in support of that. But if you want to, cause change in your organization, you must be ready to keep records. Keep records. So that's why I said that in all procurement communication, it must be in what? Writing. Oral communication are dangerous when you are dealing with procurement, engagement. Very dangerous.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir,
Hey,
sir, please.
You were absent last week.
Sir, I'm not absent. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Sir, please, I want to find out something. I think in the earlier stage, you were saying that sometimes you can start the procurement process before you go for approval. And so if you don't take time, they will disapprove. And
Yeah.
what you have done or you become this thing. So I wanted to know, as a procurement officer, before you start the process, please won't you seek for approval, and the approval will be there will be approval from your the head or whoever is to approve for you before you can start the process. Because for instance, when you start the procurement process take time. So sort of you start the process and you get somewhere, then the approval has not given because maybe they may not have the money to purchase that vehicle or that item, and you are now coming to start it again. So I wanted to know whether if you can, the approval can be given before you start the process.
So, okay, so thank you very much. That is how it's supposed to be. Done. That is how procurement is supposed to be. That we need to get approval before, we continue with the procurement process. But I mentioned that sometimes things are not normal. Okay, we may have emergency situation, certain circumstances that call for critical action or immediate action. So when those things happen, we can't sit down and wait for approval letters or approvals to be given by the regulator. We can't wait for that because sometimes, like I think Mr. Dansu gave a typical example. The request letter was sent. It took the regulator 3 months to respond to the letter. So will you wait 3 months before you continue with the process? Meanwhile, you clearly established that there was a critical need that has to be satisfied. So you don't wait. Okay, once there is an emergency, once there is a critical need, it may not be life and death. Maybe it has to do with the operations of the organization. So if you work in a mining company, if there's something that needs to be procured urgently for the operations of the mining company to continue, you don't wait. So that's why I'm saying that once you think that as a professional, everything is right, the conditions have been met, you can go ahead and start, get the necessary items, delivered for the operations to continue. Don't wait, because once you wait for the approval to be given before you continue or start, by the time the approval comes, the company is no more. Okay. And then for some situations, by the time you receive the approval, a lot of people might have been buried, and we don't want that to happen. So once you think that, oh, as a professional, before I can use this method, I need to have condition, satisfy condition A and B. This condition is okay, so I'm on course, but I can't wait for the approval. I know that no matter what happens, once they are professionals up there, they will definitely approve. So once the letter is gone, let me start the process because it is about life and death. But ideally, if it is not an emergency one, all procurement processes must be a plan one. We must plan our procurement. And once we plan, we know that next month we are doing A, the following month we are doing C. So we know what to do at every point in time. And that is how we're supposed to do. But you see, this is world. This is human, institution. And then things, sometimes some of these things are just beyond our control. There's nothing we can do. There's something we call an act of God. Flood is happening. I think I heard that Cape Coast 18 people died or something. So once NADMO needs something, need a particular, items to help rescue people. You don't wait for PPA to approve before you acquire those things. No, you need to save life first, and then later you can go and face it. Whoever is in charge. Okay, so that is how you're supposed to. So as a professional, you need to have that faculty of sound judgment. That this thing I'm doing, I'm on course. This thing I'm doing, I'm off course, and it's going to affect me because I said that your actions and your inactions, you need to account for them. So you need to ask, before I take this step, am I making the right step or not? If it is the wrong step, don't do it. If it is the right step, do it. Make. Okay, so I think our time is up.
Thank you, sir.
If there are no questions, I think we will end here. I think I didn't talk about request for quotation, but very similar to what we've mentioned, and we need to. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
So please, the slides are not on the LMS.
Come again, please.
Checking the LMS. So please, have you posted the slides on the LMS?
Yes, please.
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, somebody confirmed it too. So you check again. One of your friends.
I even checked this morning, but still.
Yeah, I think it's not visible for some of us. I don't know why.
Oh, how?
It maybe not from your part, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from the management or maybe the system, actually, because I've checked, but from my end, it's still the same.
Right now?
Even right now, it's not showing.
Oh.
But I check right now and it is there right now.
Okay. It's supposed to be there. Okay. So I don't know. Last rep. There's this student. Is it Mariam? Let me check before you leave. Please, a minute. I want to check something before you leave. I'm not even taking attendance. I will take this thing. So we can end the recording now. Let me do this.
So for my, it's working now. Now I'm seeing it, but earlier on I couldn't see it, but now it's showing.
It's showing. Okay.
Mine is not showing.
Have you registered?
Yes, I've registered.
That is showing. It's there. The slides is there.
I've registered, but mine is not showing.
I think it's a technical issue. With a course rep, we'll be able to assist you. I think it's.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, NS, it will come. So time to time it will come. So they are updating one after the other.
So the class rep has spoken. So I said I want
a question was sent to the chat too.
Oh, is that so? Okay, let me check something. Let me check something quickly, please. What's the name? May people. Okay. Business niche. Okay, so can you access your results now? Your results. Can you access it? Last semester's results.
No.
Please, have you published it?
Oh, please.
Okay. Okay. Dinah Owusu. Is she here? Is it Mrs. Dinah Owusu?
It's me.
Hey, Dinah, what's the problem? We don't talk. Dinah Owusu. Oh, okay. So the reason why I look for her is that my course, she topped my course for last semester. So I wanted to know the face behind this name. Dinah Owusu. So you did so well in my course last semester. Congratulations, eh?
Thank you, sir. Hope it comes with money.
Yeah, definitely. So when we meet, I will give you some coins, maybe 20 pesos for something.
Oh.
All right. Okay. So on that note, we will meet next week. Bye bye.